Ruben Garrido from Heinrich-Heine-Universität in Düsseldorf.
Hello everybody. Maybe I don't know if you can hear me properly.
I've got it.
Is it okay?
Yeah,
It should be okay, right?
Yeah.
Hello? Hello? Does it work?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, hello everyone, and thank you for coming. I just want to maybe start very quickly by introducing myself. So, I am a computer scientist, and I'm doing my PhD at the moment, and I work at two different groups. So, first I work with Alice Mahardy, who is, I think is in the, there she is. She's a computational biologist at the University of Düsseldorf, and I also work with Paul Schütze-Leffert, who is a plant scientist that works in the Max Planck Institute for Plant Breeding Research in Cologne, and he specializes in plant microbe interactions. So by knowing this, maybe you can imagine a little bit what is the sort of thing that I have been working on. So what I'm interested is in computational methods to study these microbial communities. Mostly based on analysis of sequencing data. So today I'm going to be talking about the microbial communities which are associated to one particular model plant, so in this case barley. So let me start by very quickly introducing these, and because you might ask me why a computer scientist might be interested in this box. So as you probably all know, like in soil there are very rich and diverse microbial communities, and plants and healthy plants are in constant interaction with these microbial communities, and some of the members of these communities are very nasty pathogens, and some are symbionts, very specialized symbionts, and also some commensals. So the presence of this microbial community for the plant is both an opportunity, but it's also a great threat. That is in a way similar to what we can see in the vertebrate microbiome. So when we study human microbiome in mice, for example, and so on. But there are some differences that I think make this particular system a little more interesting. First of all, maybe is the fact that some of these microbes have developed very specialized forms of symbiosis, which I think they don't have an equivalent in the vertebrate case. Another very interesting property is that unlike in humans and in mammals, where adaptive immune system takes a prevalent role, plants don't have this evolved adaptive immune system. They instead have a very sophisticated innate immune system. So without going into detail, this innate immune system, the main feature of it is that it's based on recognition. So the first layer of this immune response is based on an array of detectors that plants have in the surface of the cells, and these detectors can pick up on bits and pieces of microbes. So they detect things which are ubiquitous in microbes, such as the flagellar apparatus, and that they are often very well conserved. So it seems a very general kind of trigger of immunity. And nevertheless, when we study the microbial communities in the rhizosphere, which is the portion of the soil which is under influence of the root, and also in the endophytic compartment, so inside of the roots, we find a very well-defined microbial community. So this is an apparent paradox. How can it be that in the presence of this sophisticated immune system, there are these characteristic microbial communities? So in this talk, I'm gonna very quickly show some results in a recent project that we have been working on, in which we combine 16S data to assess the diversity of these microbial communities, and we also analyze shotgun metagenome data that allows us to explore a little bit the functions and the microevolution in this microbial communities. So the reason why we use barley is, well, because it's a crop, and it would be very interesting if we can somehow learn how to tame these symbionts and to make them useful for agricultural purposes. But it's also interesting as a model because so we have access to different accessions of barley that represent different stages in the domestication process. So we can look at wild-type varieties that have been mostly unchanged over the last few thousand years. We have access to cultivated varieties that are used by subsistence farmers, for example, in the Middle East, that have been undergoing a process of domestication since the beginning of agriculture. And we have access to modern varieties of barley that, since the Green Revolution or so, they have been the product of extensive, if you wish, artificial selection process. So our research question is whether this selection process has had any impact on the assembly of these microbial communities. So if you put them in a tree, sort of a schematic actually does not really reflect. So yeah, it's just a diagram. So you can see the wild type has mostly remained unchanged over the last 10,000 years because it has not been a subject of domestication, but the cultivated varieties have been changing quite a lot. So this is very quickly an introduction of our experimental setup. We have a number of 16 samples for the three different barley genotypes. We have samples from the root and the rhizosphere. We have samples from unplanted control soils and multiple replicates. And we also obtained some shotgun metagenome data to study the functions encoded by these microbial communities. So when we try to address this question, okay, is there an effect of the genotype in these microbial communities? And we try to explore the environmental factors that influence the beta diversity. So we find that maybe the most strong influencing factor is the microhabitat, so the compartment. We can separate very well soil samples from root samples from rhizosphere samples. And this more or less accounts for about 1/4% of the overall variance of the data. But we also found that there is a significant effect of the genotype in the assembly of the root and rhizosphere microbial community. So we are able, in fact, to discern between microbial communities associated with the land-raised varieties, with the modern varieties, and with the wild type. So this accounts for only a small percentage of the overall variance of the data, but nevertheless it's consistent across replicates and is statistically significant. So this was somewhat surprising, because whatever we are doing when we breed plants for modern cultivars, we are affecting, in fact, the microbial communities associated. And sometimes we might doing something that in the long run we might not ideally want. So we have been extensively analyzing also this compartment, these communities in Arabidopsis. And one feature, so if you look at these ternary plots, let me explain quickly what they are. Based on the 16S data, we can subdivide, so we can classify the risks which we get into different OTUs, so different somewhat species, not quite to the level of a species. And each point in these diagrams correspond to one of these OTUs. The size of the dot corresponds to the relative abundance across samples. And the position in the diagram is, for example, if you pick up this point over here, this is an OTU which is present in the root samples, but is completely absent in the rhizosphere of the soil samples. So if you look into Arabidopsis here on the right-hand side, you find that there is, if you project these points into this axis, you find that most OTUs have similar abundance in soil and in rhizosphere. But there is a subset, when you project, for example, in this axis, there's a subset of OTUs which are very much abundant in the root compartment, but they are almost not present in the soil, and vice versa. So you can find a subset of OTUs we could call rotus or root OTUs, which are characteristic of the root compartment. And when we look at barley, we see that the picture is somehow a little different. So in this case, there is a difference between soil and rhizosphere. So there are like bacterial OTUs which are abundant in the root compartment are also somewhat abundant in the rhizosphere. And our hypothesis is that some of these blue dots, so root-associated species, they are on the way into the root. So the selection process that discriminates, so that selects from the soil microbial community into the root microbial community in barley starts in the rhizosphere. And this presents an opportunity because when we want to look at the functions encoded by these root microbial communities, it's very difficult to get shotgun metagenome from roots because you get mostly plant material. And if you sequence soil, if you sequence soil, these bacterial communities are not abundant enough to be able to explore them consistently. So we took advantage of this rhizosphere effect, and then we subjected the same a subset of these samples to shotgun metagenome sequencing. And then we tried to explore the functions encoded by these root-associated microbial taxa, and we also tried to look for signatures of positive selection, try to detect novel elicitors of plant immune response, and somehow study the microevolution going on in this environment. So maybe I will just go quickly that you can also look at how the abundances that you estimate from the 16S survey correlate to the abundances that you estimate from the metagenome survey. And so as you know, when you design primers for 16S sequencing, you reduce yourself to some so for example, you don't target archaea. Some effects of primer design might let you leave out entire branches of the bacterial tree of life. And somewhat is a useful piece of, it's not redundant information. Somewhat is useful to be able to also taxonomically classify and analyze the diversity using both approaches. So I'm only going to very quickly mention that when you try to correlate these things, we find that different kinds of ways that we can use to assess the abundance of these bacterial species, they correlate fairly well, but if you are thinking that we are actually measuring the same thing, so you might be a little skeptical. But nevertheless, we try to justify, we try to somewhat make sure that we understood a little bit more about the biases that are typical of each way of assessing diversity here. So moving on a little bit, I was mentioning that our initial goal for sequencing, for doing shortcut sequencing of the rhizosphere was to try to understand a little bit more about the functional potential of these communities. So we use the fact that in the rhizosphere there is already some of these root-associated OTUs which are on the way to colonize the surface and the interior of the root, and we compare them with the function coded by the soil associated microbial taxa. And we found that there are a number of functions or functional categories which are significantly enriched in these root-associated taxa with respect to the soil OTUs. And we found that some of these functional categories, they are known to be relevant for interactions between the plant and the microbes, such as, for example, type 3 secretion system. Some other of these functional categories might be relevant to survival in this environment, for example, addition or secretion of siderophores, detoxification, and so on. And we also found that functional categories related to bacterial phages and to defense against phages, so some proteins of the CRISPR-associated system were significantly abundant in the root samples with respect to soil, so in the root taxa with respect to soil taxa. And we also looked at which ones of these functions showed footprints of positive selection, which is the last bit of my talk. Basically, what we were doing is we were using the NDS that some of you might know as an approach to try to estimate how positive selection or purifying selection acts on a protein sequence. And when we look at those that are, so this is the density is like a smooth histogram of the DNDS ratio, and we find that some categories are also significantly increased. These are enriched in overlapping functions, with the function which we found to be abundant and relevant for root-associated microbial taxa. And these are mostly related to pathogenesis, secretion, interactions with the plant, and as well with defense systems for defense against bacterial phages. Furthermore, we use this similar approach to look for clusters of residues. So this is 3 examples of 3 proteins with clusters of residues under strong positive selection. And we found an overlap with already reported elicitors of plant immune response. So we are trying to figure out a little bit how to put together the fact of this very general immune response with the fact that some of these commensals, some of these symbionts, and some of these pathogens are able to start a dialogue with the plant to be able to colonize the inside of the roots and the surface of the roots. Yeah, so I think I'm already running out of time, so I will go over my conclusions, and I just want to very quickly acknowledge the people I'm working with. First and foremost, Alice and Paul, who are my supervisors, and then I'm a member of 2 different groups, so I have a lot of people that I'm very, very grateful to work with. In particular, Davide Bulgarelli, who has been doing the wet lab for this project. Also, Johannes, Yao, and Philip, who has also been contributing to the story. I also quickly want to say Ivan is also present in the audience. He has a poster. He has developed a method for metagenome beaning. If you are planning on getting some shotgun metagenome data, then it would be a good idea if you go and take a look. And I also want to thank you for your attention. And yeah.
We have time for a few questions, if there is any. All right, it looks like everybody is desperate for coffee. So let us thank all the speakers from this morning.